In the previous video, we talked about Gestalt perception, but I'm sure many of you know uh, Uta Frith and her book, Autism Explaining the Enigma. And everything is based on weak central coherence theory there. That is, they perceive the world in fragments. Everything is fragmented. While Gestalt, it is taking in everything. There are no filters. The whole scene is perceived as one entity. So who is right? Me with my Gestalt perception or Uta Frith with fragmentation? I can tell you both. I'll explain. But before we have to define perception, what we understand as perception. Perception is a complicated process and it consists of several stages. The first one is sensation. For example, if I take this object, I don't know what it is yet. At the stage of sensation, I either can see it or I can feel it, right? But I don't know what it is yet. The next stage is interpretation. I recognize this object. It is a book. And the next stage is comprehension. I know what I can do with this. I know that I can read it. And by the way, if the person is blind, for example, the process is absolutely the same. The person can touch it because he has no vision and interpret it as a book. And if it is in Braille, he can read it. So the same process if blindness is involved. Though, of course, there are people who are blind and autistic as well. But anyway, an autistic child can stay at the stage of sensation. He can see this object, he can feel it, he can hear it if he goes through the pages, he can smell it, he can tear a page or two, and so on. And that's why, see, it's much more difficult for him to go to interpret what it is and to know what to do with this. And if we remember that they have no filters and perceive everything at the stage of sensation, not interpretation, it's impossible. No brain can interpret everything simultaneously. He can stay at these sensations much longer. And this is caused by this Gestalt perception. But no brain can process all the stimuli simultaneously. That is why they start by bit, by bit, by bit, and all these bits are fragmented. That's how Gestalt perception at the stage of interpretation or attempt to interpret goes to fragmentation. And that is why everything stays as bits and pieces around the child, whether visual or auditory or tactile and so on and so forth. By the way, Donna Williams, in her autobiographies, she described this process. She said, I had always known that the world was fragmented. My mother was a smell, my father was a tone, and my older brother was something which was moving around. Because, see, she recognized her mother not visually. She recognized her mother by smell, her father by the tone of his voice, and so on and so forth. That is why when they went shopping, for example, her mother and Donna, she would follow any other lady with the same perfume, and she was lost. And or she heard something, or she smelled something, or she saw bits and pieces. It is difficult. You can see on these two pictures, these are drawings of an autistic teenager whose vision is fragmented, and you can see it in these drawings. And by the way, it's interesting. Can you guess what he drew? Because he was commenting while he was drawing. The upper picture is a plane. and the bottom picture is a train. So, but it is like a illustration to this fragmented visual perception. By the way, fragmentation may be felt in any sensory modality. In different children, it is a different modality that is affected by Gestalt and fragmentation. Those with fragmented vision, they didn't see the whole person. I mean, at the stage of sensation, they do see the whole person. But when they start to recognize it, to interpret, they see bits and pieces. Like my son, for many years, it was a huge problem until he started wearing his glasses, tinted glasses, when they put everything together and made interpretation much, much easier. And that is why he hated, he couldn't tolerate it when someone was pointing. You know, teachers at school, right? Pointing at something. He would hit the hand of the teacher. Why? It's not aggression. It's not this difficult behavior. Just try to imagine if he saw not the whole person, but a hand. And of course, he couldn't interpret, oh, this is a hand of my teacher. Whatever. Imagine if you are listening now and then suddenly something will appear in front of your nose. What will you do? You won't say, oh, hello. No, it is really frightening and a lot of problems. So when I talk to teachers or nurses or whatever, I always say, please don't point, because it frightened him. Now, as he developed, right, and he can see everything more sort of as a whole, then yeah, his reactions are fine. But this was a huge problem for a few years. And for example, it can be fragmented tactility. Somebody can sort of rub sandpaper on his skin because he cannot feel it, or bite himself because he cannot feel it. Just to feel it, he has to do something about it. And then, only then, they will interpret what it is. Or it can be auditory fragmentation. For example, they will hear with meaning. It means with interpretation, just a few words in a sentence. You can say something, John, please go, whatever, whatever, whatever. There, take that. For the person, it will be just a few words. And to connect them together into one sentence, it is much, much more difficult, and so on. So fragmentation may be felt in any sensory modality. And the same sort of, let us call it symptoms, right? The same features like with Gestalt. They don't like changes. They resist to any change because these bits and pieces are moving. And that is why they select for attention minor aspects of objects. The child can turn the wheels of a toy car, right, and focus on this. That's why they focus on these tiny, tiny details. Or they may not recognize people if they wear different clothes. We do wear sort of the same style, or we like certain colors because it is difficult for them. Any tiny detail changes the whole. They get lost very easily. Something is not like me, or I can tell you this, I cross the road and I am lost because everything is different from a different angle. So I know how frightening it is and how uncomfortable I feel. Then they can complain about certain parts of their tops or whatever. They don't like it here, but there it's okay. And smells. And what we can do to help them? The same, like with Gestalt, structure and routines make the environment predictable and easier to control. Because even if they are a bit confused about something, they know, oh, here I do this, or there something will happen like it happened before. And routines and rituals help them to understand of what is going on and what is going to happen. And that is why, again, I repeat, like last time, always explain beforehand what and why is going to change and involve the child into creating these changes if you want to do something, especially in his room. And this explains how this gestalt and fragmentation bind together. And now I want to tell you about distortions. I mean, fragmentation is also distortion, right? Distortion of the perception of the world. But I distinguish between the two. Distorted perception, it's when not fragments, but distortions. And for example, in the field of vision, it is poor or distorted depth perception or space perception. For some, rooms may look smaller than they are or bigger than they are. Some see two-dimensional world. This double vision and distortions of shape, size, and movement. There are autistic children and adults who cannot see movement. They can see the person at this point, and then suddenly the same person at that point. They cannot perceive their movement. We know about it from their autobiographies, from their experiences they share with us. Some see their hands and things they touch as if they were multiplied or overlaid by similar reproductions of itself, and so on and so forth. By the way, uh, if you're a teacher and you give the smiley faces at the end of child's work, for example, right? Some children wouldn't recognize that what you mean, smiley, right? We call it, because for them it is not a face. It is something round with some dots, and they don't recognize it as a face. Yes, they do learn that if the curve of this inside this circle goes up, it means the teacher is pleased with your work. If down, then not. But still, please do remember, because for some faces consist of shadows. I will give you just one example. How Lucy Blackman, a nonverbal young lady now, she wrote her autobiography, Lucy's Story. By the way, I recommend it. It's fantastic. Where she described the faces like consisted of shadows, a pair of small circular shadows inside the eye, the pair of long mouth to inner eye shadows which ran along the nose. The mouth was a slit-shaped shadow, and so on and so forth. And that's why they find recognition of people difficult and recognition of other things as well. I will give you two portraits of the mother of a boy. He was nonverbal at the time. He was about, yeah, just before 7. And another one is by a teenager already with fragmented vision, a verbal teenager with fragmented vision. So these two boys I worked with, their vision was fragmented or distorted. The first one, this teenager with fragmented vision, this how he saw his mother, or at least how he drew his mother. And this one, the second from this nonverbal boy, I do hope, is it recognizable? Because it is me. It is my son when I asked him to draw my portrait. And you remember he was afraid of hands pointing. And that's why when he was 15 years old, again, I asked him to draw. I wanted him to feel the body. We worked on this separately, but visually. So this, you can see his self-portrait. You can see how distorted it is. And then I asked him again to draw me. And you can see this hand instead of the body. It explains a lot. And perhaps you notice I always use my hands while talking, right? I can't talk without waving my hands. And that's how he saw me. Let us include his sister as well. This is our family picture drawing. You can see me, I think, in the middle. I guess at least, because it is the biggest figure. Then him and his little sister, and separate picture of his sister. Again, you can see how uh, his vision was distorted. And by the way, we worked a lot. I have no time to tell you more about it right now, but still it is possible to go through art and physical exercises and movements, his own movements, uh, to make him feel his body and to see himself differently. Auditory distortions and fluctuations. They may hear sounds like a bad mobile phone connection where the voices fade in and out of the conversation. They can hear it, but they are distorted. And some sounds can go in front of the other ones. Like, it's a very interesting thing when they hear the second syllable first and then the first. It's the timing of processing of sounds is also distorted. And how to recognize that the child can have distorted of perception. Many fear height or stairs or escalators. It means their perception is difficult here. They have difficulty catching balls, like with my son. When he was very young, a toddler, I threw the ball and he was standing there. He couldn't catch it. He wouldn't even attempt to do it. Then they appear startled when being approached, and the compulsive, repetitive hand, head, or body movements. It's when interoception is also distorted. Pronunciation problems, because they cannot hear clearly the sounds, and they find it difficult to distinguish between some sounds. It is auditory distortions. Some will hit eyes or nose or but face, just either to feel something or to help processing what is going on. And difficulty hopping, jumping, riding a bicycle, it is proprioception here, and vestibular problems as well. We talked only about two or three sort of uh, differences in sensory perception and autism, but we can say already they have these different sensory experiences, and these different sensory experiences create different perceptual worlds. And the problem is they don't realize, especially when they are young, that they perceive the world differently. How can you know that 99% of the population see the world differently? It's impossible, isn't it? I like this example by one of the autistic teenagers. He said, imagine that you are in your classroom. Imagine you cannot distinguish between two colors, red and green. And you are in the classroom, and your teacher hands out sheets of paper with instructions printed on this sheet of paper. Everyone starts working, only you sit there staring at this paper and you don't know what to do. Why? Because these sheets of paper are green and the instructions printed on this are red, are in red. So everyone knows what to do and they start working. Only you would sit here staring at this paper and you would be absolutely confused and think, what is going on? Why don't I understand? Am I an idiot or what? That is why we always have to remember that we live in two parallel perceptual worlds, actually, in one physical world, but in two parallel ones. Is it possible to move into one? In a way, yes, if we can help them, if we can address their problems, and if we understand their difficulties and change our approach to this. Like, in if we know that the child cannot tolerate pointing and whatever, we will find other ways while correcting their problems, like providing them special sort of aids like tinted glasses if it is about vision, or earplugs or whatever. And then we can be closer. We can start sharing our reality, if you like, if we know how they are different. Their perception is different.